consent has been given to us to record this meeting and post it on our social media platforms.
Sure, Nishkash.
Thank you so much for your confirmation. Good evening, everyone. I, Mishkar Srivastav, on behalf of Kirodiman College, welcome Shaurya and Rajan to the Alumni Connect of KMC. Today, joining us, we have a staff coordinator, Dr. Seema Joshi. So before we begin, I'd like to welcome Seema Joshi ma'am to give us highlight about this event.
Thank you so much, Nishkarsh. Dear all, good evening. Sometimes it seems that we never ever realized the power of young alumni before, as we have been realizing now after the establishment of Kirodiman College Alumni Network. It is this recently formed KMC Alumni Network which decided to celebrate the Founders Day of KMC for a month rather than a day, and that too virtually, and that too with an important stakeholder of our institution, that is our very own alumni. I'm very delighted to report that approximately 17 alumni speakers from various institutions like IIM Ahmedabad to IIM Bangalore, from IIM Lucknow to IIM Indore, from Boston University to Georgia University, from Singapore Management University to INSEAD France, and from Delhi School of Economics to Paris School of Economics, and reached more than 1,000 students who participated actively in the 13 sessions organized during the month of February 2021. Every session under the umbrella of KMC Alma Connect 2021, whether panel discussion or speaker session or experience sharing sessions by our alumni, have been very well received. After celebrating 7th International Yoga Day through live yoga sessions and Sahaj Yoga meditation session, we at Kirodiman College Alumni Network decided to launch Building Career Path series by sparking conversation and connections with our alumni. Today is the 8th speaker session under this series. I would like to share with you that at KMC, we had a long cherished dream to engage and involve our alumni to benefit their current juniors through their wealth of experience and skill sets. We always believe that our alumni are our true brand ambassadors. We want to leverage these alumni engagements, which not only allow alumni to provide ready help to the institution in different ways, that is academically, professionally, and socially, but also enables them to stay connected with each other and help each other grow and succeed in their respective fields. We intend to build a strong alumni network, which works as a healthy support system to the institution and contributes to overall institutional development. We understand that this will be possible only through engagement and a strong value system, which we are ready to build brick by brick. Seeing the phenomenal performance of Matvi, which is a startup initiative of our today's speakers, I can expect that someday our alumni will develop an AI-based app to build alumni database also for their alma mater. Things will be much easier for us through their innovation. Friends, we have heard a lot about Industry 4.0, which promotes the use of big data, IoT, and artificial intelligence. But I was unaware till recently when it was brought to my attention that it is our two alumni who have launched one of the leading startups in India named Matvi, which is India's first multilingual AI-driven professional networking and mentorship app that helps people connect one-on-one virtually, and that too as per their common needs. It is indeed a proud moment for me to welcome the Chief Executive Officer of Matvi, Mr. Shaurya Malhotra, and Chief Operating Officer of Matvi, Rajan Luthra, from KMC class of 2020 and 2019 respectively, to this KMC Alumni Network platform. Our ma'am has also joined. And now I would request our principal madam, Professor Vibha Singh Chauhan, who is an inspiration behind this Kirodiman College Alumni Network, to kindly welcome our speakers and the participants.
Thank you very much, Professor Seema Joshi. I'm sorry for this somewhat late entry, but there was a function of one of the non-teaching staff members, so which I could not leave earlier. So very warm welcome. I think we have two guests today, isn't it?
Yeah, ma'am.
We have two speakers, Shaurya Mehrotra and Rajan Luthra. Thank you very much for coming and talking to us and your other friends, some of them present students. And I think there are some alumni also who have come together to listen to you. It is always very good to have our alumni and former students with us. It's good to see how they have grown and how they have been successful in what they are doing. And what we expect today is a mix of professionalism. If I'm not wrong, of professionalism as well as entrepreneurship today, and we are really looking forward to it. It's with the support of alumni like Shaurya and Rajan, and the team of Alumni Network, which is led by Professor Seema Joshi, and of course, our very active participants who are joining us every day for the talks. And we find that these talks by alumni are actually becoming quite popular. So obviously, they are not just interesting, but they are useful. And the younger alumni have the advantage of being more closely connected with our students. So, a very warm welcome. Thank you very much. And I don't want to delay you further. So, please go ahead. And we hope that our contact with our alumni like our two speakers today is going to be continuous, long, and fruitful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such a warm welcome, and it's a pleasure to be here. I think back when we were in college, we both kind of look forward to a moment where we would also be invited as successful alumnus of this college. And we have been following the footsteps of Mr. Ashish Kashyap, who's one of the most successful entrepreneurs from Kirodiman College. He was the founder of Go Go, and we are really happy to continue that legacy and try and in future maybe try and match his footsteps. So thank you so much for inviting us here. Really looking forward to this.
Thank you for the highlights to Team Metvi and Seema ma'am, Viva ma'am. I'll be taking a short while just to introduce our guest and what Metvi is. So as Seema ma'am and Viva ma'am just said, it is an absolute honor and delight to introduce our guests, Mr. Rajan Luthra and Mr. Shaurya Mehrotra. First, a little about Metvi. So the company they founded was established in 2018. It's helping build a platform to enable youngsters like us to connect with industry experts through curated learning experiences. Also, fun fact, Metvi has raised multiple rounds of funding from Delhi-backed government. So our first guest, Mr. Rajan Luthra, is a BCom honors graduate from the class of 2019. So he's technically very young, a person of great experience. He is presently the co-founder and COO or Chief Operating Officer at Metvi. So prior to this, he was a senior associate at ASA and Associates LLP. Secondly, now we have a guest speaker, Mr. Shaurya Mehrotra. Belonging to the class of 2020, an extraordinary BCom honors student, he is the co-founder and CEO of Metvi. Shaurya is also a TEDx speaker, and he was an advisor to many early stage startups. So absolutely in awe of your accomplishments on behalf of KMC, and I warmly welcome you and request you to tell us more about yourselves.
You go first.
No, you go first.
Sure. Okay. So I think you've very well covered what we are trying to build. We personally believe that mentorship space in India has been very highly, it hasn't been something that a lot of startups have been able to successfully solve for. And back when we were in college, we realized that, as being youngsters, we are always looking forward to connect with the kind of people who can help us grow professionally, right? But it's still a very, very tedious task to do so. So, Rajan coming from a background where he has taught before, and me being someone who's done multiple courses, we always wanted to, build a learning experience where people can connect with the top level mentors of the industry, people who are working with brands like Google, Amazon, Facebook, PepsiCo, Nike, and learn from them and try and understand how they can go about building their professional career in a more structured way, right? So this started off as an initiative back when I had just entered my second year and Rajan was in final year, and we started working on a hyper local networking platform, which is how we were trying to solve the problem of helping people connect when they're in the same locality, and then gradually evolving this idea to a level where we realized that mentorship is one of the biggest use cases that we would want to first solve for. And to do so, instead of building courses or just helping people connect directly with the mentors, we wanted to create a structured experience where youngsters are getting an opportunity to sit down, learn from the best people in the industry, the skills that they want to learn, right? So imagine learning sales from head of sales of Amazon, right? Live, sitting in front of him. Imagine learning branding from somebody who's been heading branding for PepsiCo for the last 7-8 years. Imagine learning artificial intelligence from someone who's been working on multiple AI projects for Google, right? And so on and so forth. So we started running multiple programs which focus on helping people learn, not only through live mentorship, but also through relevant content, through practical assignments where they're getting to work on all of these things in the real world on the ground level. And lastly, and the most important part, is the care, right? So we understood the fact that learning is not just a mental process, right? Which is something that's very well, that's something that we kind of imbibe from our experience at Kirodimal College, because we fortunately didn't come from a college where we were always just forced to just learn and focus on the academic side of the things, right? I think KMC is one of those very few colleges in the country which has excellence at both academic levels as well as extracurricular levels, right? So we wanted to build an experience where people are able to become capable enough to grow not only mentally but also emotionally while they are learning something. And that's the reason why we implemented what we also call our care model into the curated learning experiences that we offer, where people are getting to share their emotions, they are getting to share the problems, they are getting to be curious and step out of their comfort zone and learn at their own pace, right? So we offer 30-day mentorship programs, apart from obviously having an app through which people can directly schedule virtual meetups at mutual availability and connect with the best people. In terms of my personal introduction, I think Nishkarsh has already shared almost all of the things. I've worked with brands like Ogilvy. I've also worked with social entrepreneurial ventures along with Rajan. And at the same time, I've also got got a chance to be a keynote speaker at over 100 engagements now. So my focus as the founder and the CEO of Metvi is to take things forward along with Rajan and build an organization that completely changes how people learn things. Over to you.
So, hi everyone, and good evening to Principal Ma'am, uh, all the professors on the call, and fellow juniors. So, again, I mean, before I just entered the KMC, I was a kind of a person who is just into academics and no extracurricular activities, because unfortunately, from the background I came, there was more focus to academics, and like uh, there was no other opportunities apart from what you can do outside the class. But fortunately, when I got into KMC, the kind of a exposure I got in the form of societies, and like the kind of a work I did in college, although it was just for college societies, but it gave me very valuable lessons, and I think I learned how to deal with people, which also helped me in my business. Because even if you are working on in sponsorship section in a particular society, you are dealing with outsiders, right? You are dealing with third parties. So before going or talking about the career prospects, I think career prospects can only be developed from day zero when you are in college, when you are taking advantage of every opportunity that is coming next to you. So don't consider any work that it's a small work, just talking to sponsors or calling people. This would be the first lesson that you will learn and you will use when you will be taking a job or doing a startup. So many people still undervalue it, considering the colleges have been online and they think that in online space, more things cannot be done. So they withdraw themselves from these opportunities. But you have to remember that even if you step outside the college, the offices are working online, the startups are working online, the companies are working online. So you need to learn that how to create this opportunity and how you can hone your skills in the online space. So first thing, that cannot be an excuse to not learn things, right? Even if the colleges are online. Second thing, talking about the career prospects, I think Shaurya explained everything, like how we are working in Mitfi, we are working in a mentorship space. We want people to hone skills. We want people to become more employable in a structured manner by interacting with live speakers in real time, and that is how we are working on our application. But again, if one advice I would be, I just want to give from the limited experience that I have, that even you can choose entrepreneurship as a career. So people say that it's a high risk job. What if the startup fails? You can't keep all the eggs in one basket. What I did when I was like in 2020, when I graduated and Shaurya was still in his third year, I did a job at a company like ASN Associates, and I also worked at my startup because I wanted to keep the ball rolling. So you can choose entrepreneurship as a journey, as a career prospect. If you think that you don't have that much risk taking ability, you do side hustle. You can take a simple job or you can freelance and you can do your startup simultaneously. And don't think about this thing that we don't know how to run a company. At day zero, we were students, we were just graduated. We also did not know anything about running a company, but that is how you learn, right? So you choose entrepreneurship as a journey. If you don't know how to go about it, you connect to people who have already worked in a startup, or just find a small job in a big start. Like in a, I would suggest like find a job in a not in a very big company, but at a medium or small size startup. Because in small organizations, there's a huge like scope of learning. But when you become a small part of a big organization, obviously you get a good compensation or a good designation, but learning is limited. So you have to also decide that are you want to like do you want to become a person who knows everything? I mean, know something of marketing also, product also, sales also. So in that case, a small organization would be a good fit for you, like a good thing for you. But in case you're just building your profile and you want good branch because you want to go for further studies, for post graduation, then maybe you can apply for big fours or big threes. I mean, it depends. But coming like me and Shaurya, like we did BCom honors, we had no technical background. If you can start a tech company which is focusing on artificial intelligence and we're trying to learn technology, then I think the course that you have or your past experience cannot be an excuse for not doing anything, because you actually start learning things when you put your hands like in that and when you start working on ground. So I think this is these were the thoughts which I wanted to communicate to you, and you still have this 3 years of opportunity where you can work and just yes. Sorry for the interruption. Shaurya is just coming in a minute. I think someone has come at the doorstep, so he's just going to like, check that who has come. So talking about again this thing, like I mentioned that. Uh, Coming from this commerce background cannot be an excuse for not starting a technical company. So I would be more happy if you guys ask more questions which I can answer. If you are curious to know more about startup or the career prospects, so you can probably shoot more questions. We would love to take them, and I I think now the
Yeah,
moderators.
yeah, thank you for that introduction. So one thing what we did was, so I mean, so there's a lot of people who want to, just become an entrepreneur in our college. and especially in ourselves. So what we did was we floated a form in which people could write down their questions, and I'm surprised by the type of questions they've been asking. So I'm going to pose all of them to you. They're unfiltered, raw, and hopefully I mean, you could probably answer all of these because they're kind of personal as well. So okay, so
No
when
worries,
you
no worries. Yeah.
thank you so much. So when you start your company, you obviously need to have a product idea or a service idea. How do you validate your product idea? That do people actually need?
So there are multiple ways to validate your product. One thing is that you float a Google form and you get your responses. But I think floating a Google form is a sort of a I think not a very efficient process, because if I am filling a form that I will buy a XYZ product, I'm just filling a form. It doesn't mean that I will eventually go and it's 100% that I will buy, right? So I would not say that it's a good way to validate things. I think in startups there's a concept called MVP, minimum viable product. So it means a product that has built with minimum cost, minimum efficiency, but has the basic functionality. So I would suggest that someone should build a MVP sort of a thing and should launch that thing in the market. If users are subscribing to that or showing interest, it means the product has some kind of attraction. It means the initial demand. If the initial demand starts coming in through the MVP, which is made up with minimum cost, a minimum time, then I think it's a good idea to start a company with that particular idea. The problem is, or the mistakes that people do, they try to focus on the finished product. They spend months in making the final product. They launch it. When the product gets failed, they say the startups are too risky. So MVP is something that should be built in weeks and not months, and it will build with minimum cost and minimum functionality. So more than a Google form, I would suggest that make a prototype or beta or a MVP and then launch it and then see how people are responding to the product. It should be in a tangible form. People should can do stuff on it, right? It should be something like that. Even if it's an application, it should not be so beautiful. It can look ugly, but it should have the basic functionality or in a raw form. And you just tell people you use this and let me know what is your feedback. Even if there are 10 people, 20 people, doesn't matter, but those feedback should be unbiased.
Okay, so yeah, I get that. So I mean, keeping in mind Medvi's scenario, so I mean, obviously you guys also must have had a minimal viable product, right? So
Yes,
right
we
now,
had, yeah.
okay, so right now the product that you have helps youngsters like us to connect with industry leaders, right? So what
Right,
was
right.
so I mean, initially when you had that minimum viable product, what was its functionality?
So, okay, I'll just tell you. So the MVP that we had, the app was not that beautiful. It was very different from what it is right now. It was just a simple app where you can see people around you. Okay, and that's it. And the people would be only visible if you have mutual interest. Suppose I like watching football and someone else also like watching football. So that person would be shown on a mobile screen if he or like if both the people are in the same vicinity. And I can just click on the profile and I can just have a masked call with that person. Masked call means that the number would not be shared, but we would be connected on an internet call. And then I can talk and get to know about that person. So that was the MVP. We just wanted to test that whether people are curious to know about the people around them or are interested in networking. And right now, if your app sees, right now the app is very different. It also has a feature where you can subscribe to our paid courses. So that is how we have evolved from MVP to a prototype to a beta. The product which you are using is still not the final product, and we feel that it's a minimum marketable product, but we will not call it a final product because there's a lot of scope of improvement. We have just started.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Next question. When you launch a business, you definitely need customers, right? So getting customers for a startup is much more difficult to per se. So how when you launch your own company, how do you get your first 1,000 customers? And I think this question refers to 1,000 paid customers.
Getting 1,000 paid customers, I think that it depends upon the business model. Okay. Again, it also depends upon the ticket size that I'm charging. Suppose if I'm charging $2,000 for a particular resource that I am selling, or it can be a tangible product, it can also be a service, right? People will not just come and buy a product because obviously it's a very new brand. So you need to have a phase where you are distributing your services at a high concession. or maybe free, so that people can at least have an experience that what you're offering. And I think when they are satisfied with what the content you are providing or the service you are offering, then I think it's a good strategy that you put a price cap and you put your marketing campaigns accordingly to create a pull or traction. So getting first 1,000 users, I think you need to learn about growth hacks, learn multiple growth hacks, try to understand digital marketing, that how digital marketing works on lead generation, how digital marketing works on conversion um, thing, and how you can create a marketing funnel where from lead generation to promotion to conversion you can finally make someone to pay for your program. But it will, or for your product. I'm referring to program because we are selling programs, but here I'm talking about the product. So you need to understand, you need to create a funnel where by offering something that people are not paying much and they're getting a good experience, how you can bring them to the other side of the funnel where they're actually paying what you're expecting from them, right? So it will vary from product to product, but you have to be very aggressive when it comes to the quality of the product that you're providing. If you're focusing on masses, you cannot compromise on the product quality, because if you did, then it's very difficult to scale up after a point of time. So you need to work more hard so that product quality also improves and user acquisition is also being done aggressively.
Okay, so I understand. So it does come down to essentially building a funnel for your business, right? So I mean,
Essentially for every business. See, because understand, if it's a new brand, if I tell you that okay, I'm making this mobile phone, okay, but the company is unknown, it's a new company, will you buy it? Trust comes into the picture, right? Because you don't trust the brand. So what I can do that you, and if I tell you that okay, for 10 days you use it for free, I'm not charging, and you can also refund me the amount in case you don't like this mobile phone. But mobile phone is not a right example because obviously no one will give you a mobile phone to use it for free. But of, through a funnel, you have to offer experience so that a trust can be built around the product. Okay, and most important thing to get first 1,000 or 2,000, 10,000 customers, always remember word of mouth will play a major role. If you satisfy 5 people and you satisfied them to a quality where जो 5 लोग हैं वो खुद बोले अच्छा आपने वो ऐप यूज करा इतना अच्छा है आपने वो ऐप यूज करा इतना अच्छा है right? If people start talking about it, then there's no coming back. So how you can put the right word of mouth in place? Because that is the biggest marketing thing. Like organic word of mouth is greater than any digital marketing campaign or anything in a country like India, where people continuously talk to each other and talk about the experiences with different brands, right?
okay, I get it. So yeah, I mean, sorry for the delay. I'm just taking down notes as well. So
No issues.
um, perfect. So okay. So this brings me to my next question. I think you've somewhat answered it, but I'll just go ahead and ask it once more. How do you develop marketing strategies for your startup or your new product?
So developing marketing strategies doesn't it just it starts with the market research. I need to understand that what is like who is the customer I am targeting. If I'm targeting Nishkash, I will see that Nishkash is a 19-year-old boy studying in Kirodimal College. He spends most of the time on Instagram or LinkedIn, right? This is his content consumption habits. These are the page Nishkash must be following, right? So I would be only targeting those platforms to promote my brand. I will not post an ad at a place where probably I know Nishkash might not be watching this, or I will not be spending my money equally on YouTube or on Google or on Facebook or on Instagram. I would be going aggressively only on those platforms where I know my target audience is. So first thing that you need to choose, you need to do a market research that who is your customer, where they are so much active, so only in that place and don't spend money on other platforms. So for example, I know that people are active on Instagram, the people I'm targeting. So my ads would be high on Instagram and less on Facebook because on Facebook, I feel that the demography has been shifted. So earlier people from 18, 19 or 25 years of old were using Facebook. But now if I see people who are like 30 and above are using Facebook and audience has shifted to Instagram, right?
Yeah, I get it.
So that through that you need to do a budget allocation according to that, like what percentage of people is on what platform and how much is your spending limit and what is the ROI. ROI means if I now put 100 rupees on the advertisement, what would be the rate of return I would be getting, or return on investment I would be getting, right? It would not be rate of return, but return on investment. So suppose if you are doing the ads of 50,000, you need to do a calculation कि 50,000 में कितने users आएंगे, वो मुझे कितना pay करेंगे. If you're spending 50,000 and getting back 50,000 and you're just a break even, I think it's a good thing for the startup, because startups at initial days should focus on break even, because once you have scaled, profit will automatically come into the picture. But if you just see कि मेरे को पहले दिन से ही बहुत profit हो और you're not spending much on ads, then you won't be able to do user acquisition at a fast pace.
Okay, that was, yeah. Okay, so throughout the marketing strategy, you've been telling us. So thing is, digital marketing involves things like cost of acquiring customers. That's cost of acquisition, click-through rates, and all of those things. So I'm sure you did not get to learn all of this in your college, right? So how do you acquire all of this skill set, and how do you acquire this knowledge that's not given in a traditional manner to us?
So now there are two ways which I have adopted. One thing is that you go on internet and you try to YouTube and you try to do online courses, right, which are available. The second thing is that which I feel is the right way. Talk to people who have spent years in this industry. So, for example, if I'm learning coding right now, and I'm from BCom Honors, but I'm trying to learn mobile development, which is unlikely my course, right? So I did not just went and tried to learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React Native, because it will take me a year. Because people are learning it like from 4 years, I cannot just go and learn that thing in 3 months, right? So I would be doing need-based learning. Need-based learning means I just want to understand the code to an extent that I can understand my product. So I will not be solving 100 coding problems, right? So I will go to a developer who has experience in the industry and I will ask him that this is my product. I want to only do these things. To tell me which videos to watch. So in that case, I will just do a course 40% and that's it. But only that which I need and I can execute. Once I have learned JavaScript to an extent that I can understand my code, I will shift to React Native language. I will not do the course 100%, but I will do for 50%, because this time I'm not doing to pass the exam or for certification, but I'm doing to apply things in my business. So it's a psychology that if you have opted for a course, do it 100%. Otherwise, you will not get a certificate. But here, when you do need-based learning, the motivation is not course completion, but it's the implementation. So it reduces my time to learn things, and I'm able to efficiently work and upskill myself. So it's like reading a book to an extent where you feel that the book has now delivered you the crux. So even if you have read it 60%, you can shift to some other book. Because you got what the author is trying to say. Now it's a sort of a repetition, right?
Okay, so yeah, thank you for that. Now that brings me to my next question. This one is really interesting. How do you get people to work with you? For example, you will be featuring industry leaders on your platform, right? So that's not an easy feat to say, least. So how do you achieve that? How do you get people to work with you?
So basically, what we do, so I will try to answer this in one line, that you never sell your product, but you sell your vision. So I talk to them like what kind of a platform I'm trying to build. So for example, you said that how a person can learn marketing or cost per click, and because these things are not in the course, right? So how we can learn that? So we tell these problems to the mentors, that how people can only learn if you come on board and you teach them the hacks, or you teach them the most valuable lessons which you have curated from 10 years or 12 years of working, so that they can learn things faster, so that they can hone their skill efficiently and become more employable. So this is the problem that you talk to them and you sell your problem, that this is what we are trying to fill a gap. And people at high positions, they do these things because they also get a social, it's a kind of a mental satisfaction they get, because they are creating value in the ecosystem, right? By teaching young students. So I think that is a very important aspect. Um, So yeah, Shawl is also back. So I think that is the biggest motivation for them to come and interact with the students, and then they become a part of the model. So again, if I just go and tell them that I'm doing a Metri business program and I call you as a mentor, So that might not sound that like intriguing, but if I say that we are trying to build an ecosystem where any professional can mentor any person and make him more employable and they can hone their skills, right? So I think that will be the better way to go about your idea. So show them the big picture, like what is something that you're trying to do in 10 years down the line. Don't just talk about what is happening today. So show them the big picture, and obviously, if they're interested, they will get in touch with you and will try to become the part of your company.
Okay, so this is interesting that you mentioned selling your vision. We have to sell vision, right?
Yeah, basically, you have to uh, just a second. Yeah, so basically, you have to sell the vision.
Okay, so this next question is actually directly targeting that aspect. So this question is asking, how do you literally sell your idea to the industry leaders or the VCs that you've approached? I mean, it's basically asking, how do you sell your vision?
I think when we talk about selling the vision, first of all, it's very important to understand and spend some time in evaluating your own vision, right? I personally believe that vision is one of the most misused terms that I've personally heard in the industry so far, right? And I think the most important thing about a vision needs to be the impact that you're trying to create, right? And I think most of the vision statements that I've read so far for the startups that I've mentored or the startups that I've consulted for have focused more on the process, right? So I think when we are developing an ideal vision, we need to first of all think and evaluate the kind of impact that we would want to create, right? And then focus on what would be the best particular process that you should that we should be kind of experimenting with, which will further serve that particular impact, right? So just to kind of give you an example, and this is again coming from the mistakes that we've also made in our journey. When you are trying to solve for networking, it came from the problem statement that we ourselves as youngsters faced a lot of problems in getting connected with the right people during our college days, right? And that was something that was not easy for us in terms of getting started with the things and being in a position where we are in real impact. Okay, so this particular understanding made us start a networking platform, but we also realized that there is one specific use case where youngsters are facing problems, and that happened to be mentorship, right? So we had to understand that there's a change in the process that was required that we were earlier following, that we were trying to solve for a very wide use case. But then we realized that following a more niche and a specific need to get started with would probably create a better impact as compared to trying to solve all the problems related to networking at the same time, right? So vision is something that needs to be focused upon the impact. Secondly, the focus needs to be on innovation, and then it needs to be on experimenting with different processes that can further match the impact that you're trying to create, right? And once you have that clarity, it becomes way more easier to share things with the industry leaders. Now, when we talk about the expectations of the industry leaders, they're not really looking for their thoughts matching with the thoughts of the people who are pitching to them, right? Rather than that, they're looking to see whether we ourselves have the clarity to kind of articulate our vision and clearly share it in front of them or not, right? And until and unless that is the case, it doesn't matter what kind of vision you have, whether it's ideal or it's not ideal, you would not be able to convince industry leaders, right? So clarity is basically the biggest key to convincing people in general, right? And obviously backed up with good communication skills, backed up with some efforts or some traction to further show that you've been able to work towards this vision and it's not just a dream that you had a couple of days back.
Okay, so since you've talked about being what's the importance of being innovative, I'll ask a question on that tangent. So one of the questions that we've received is, let's say, for example, you don't have a new idea, you don't have something that's innovative. Are you still eligible to become an entrepreneur, or are you still eligible to start your company?
So do you want to answer this? Or should I answer this?
So I think if you are not working on a new idea, so for example, let me give you an example of Facebook, or let's just say when Zomato was there, right? Then Swiggy also comes into the picture, and then Food Panda also came into the picture. And when it was Amazon as an e-commerce platform, then Flipkart also they came into the picture. And when there was Uber, Ola also comes into the picture. I think if you're working on an idea which or a problem which already exists, it depends that, like, can you provide a new solution to the same existing problem, or if you're providing the same solution, can you provide a different or better experience? So for example, you are uh, using Uber app to book rides. Can I make a app through which only the rides can be booked, and I'm solving the same problem and I'm also providing the same solution but with better customer experience? Now I am using something which you can call edge. So now edge can be very different. Like edge can be less price, edge can be high quality rides, my edge can be better experience on the app, right? Which will drive someone to, like, leave that particular platform and join mine. But yes, if I'm doing the same thing, same problem, same solution, same pricing, same product, then I would not call it as a new venture. I would not call it as an entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship is not just about inventing things, but it's about being innovative. That you're solving the same problem with the same solution, but having a particular new edge that will decide the future of your company, or that will decide that whether the customers will leave the existing platform or come to your platform or not.
Okay, I understand. So,
yeah, so I think I'll just put down a very short case study for you guys to read about. I'm not sure if you've heard about Didi Chuxing, right? So Didi Chuxing is one of the biggest competitors of Uber, and Didi Chuxing is basically what Ola is to Uber in India, right? So the focus for Didi Chuxing was to understand the needs and the reactions and the responsiveness of the Chinese customers in general, right? And the reason why it was able to beat a bigger giant with lesser amount of resources, with a smaller brand name, was because of the fact that Didi Chuxing focused a lot on understanding the Chinese market and building a product that is more suitable to this particular market, right? So again, same problem, same solution, right? But the edge case here was understanding the customers in a better way, understanding the market in a better way, and trying to add that to the existing solution to make it 10x better, right? And today we already know that Uber has completely evaporated from the Chinese market, and Didi Chuxing is the only major player that's there. So I think that should answer the question.
I think it does. It totally does. So next question I have is, I think it's similar to what you just answered. With the Uber case scenario in China. Okay, so one of the questions that we've received is, since Medvi is sort of a networking platform, right? And LinkedIn is also a networking platform. So what is your edge compared to LinkedIn, and why do you think that Medvi is the need for youngsters when we keep LinkedIn in the picture?
I think when we talk about LinkedIn, see, the use case and the focus is very different, right? LinkedIn is trying to essentially solve for the job market. When LinkedIn started as an organization, they were trying to build a directory of jobs and opportunities for people to come and engage in, because it was very difficult. It was very scattered as a process, and LinkedIn was one of the first platforms that tried to create a professional experience in terms of providing everything that was relevant to professionals at a single platform, right? For us, we are trying to focus on those who are willing to learn through mentorship, right? And hence we are trying to target a different use case. We are trying to solve a different problem. We are not trying to solve the problem for the job market. We are not trying to solve the problem for helping people create a profile which they could share with their recruiters, right? We are rather trying to curate a learning experience by connecting people specifically with the right people in the industry who can groom them, who can help them achieve their professional targets, right? So we would again, at Mechvi, I am a very big fan of Reid Hoffman, right? I follow him all the time. I think I've learned a lot from his podcast, right? And I would rather encourage all the people who are working at Mechvi to go and use LinkedIn, because it's an essential tool. But at the same time, if they want to learn things, right, and that too from the right people, if they are on LinkedIn just to connect with the experts, how's their experience on the platform, right? That's definitely not as comfortable as you would want it to be. And I'm pretty sure that all the youngsters who have been using LinkedIn to reach out to experts haven't had the best of the experiences in general, right? Because that's not exactly what LinkedIn is trying to solve.
For us, that is the particular use case that we are trying to solve. That we observed that a lot of people, a lot of youngsters, a lot of working professionals were facing problems in getting connected with the right people in terms of the mentors, and in, of course, learning the right skill sets from the right people, right? And that is that specific use case that we are trying to solve for, which is also further aided by the fact that currently we have the highest program completion rate in the edtech industry, which is double than any of our other competitors in the Indian market.
Okay, so thank you for the great answer. This question is sort of serious. So if you could answer this. So over the years, you guys must have, so I mean, since Medvi's inception in 2018, you guys must have faced a lot of challenges, that's for sure. Can you name some of these challenges and how did you overcome these challenges?
Sure. So when we talk about the challenges that we faced as a startup, I think it's very similar to the challenges that most of the early stage startups face in general, right? So what are these challenges? These challenges would definitely include figuring out what is the right vision that you would want to build for, right? Rather than just trying to ride over the FOMO boat or starting your own company, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is getting the right journey and getting the right people who can help you out, right? So for all the first time entrepreneurs in general, I think the biggest problem that you face is understanding how startups work at the first place, right? And that is also something that we've tried to solve through one of our own products, which is Metri Business Program. That we wished that when we were getting started, a product like this existed, and that's the reason that over 100 startups have graduated from our Metri Business Program so far, right? So that's the thing, that if there were a group of people who could guide us in terms of what are the steps that we should be taking, if we did not rely on one mentor and we had 8 mentors, 10 mentors who all specialized in the very subdomains of entrepreneurship, right? One expert for marketing who's doing it for Nestle, one person for operations who's the CXO of a startup like BharatPe. Imagine that experience. We wanted it to be there. For us, it wasn't there. So of course, getting the right content, relevant content that we can actually subscribe to, which can guide us with all the right steps to be taken, right? There's so much information and knowledge available online that it's actually very difficult to figure out what's relevant to you and what's not, right? Apart from these challenges, of course, one of the biggest challenges is getting your product right. I think it's a challenge that you will continue to face as a startup. It's, you never get to a position where you're like, okay, now my product is sorted out, or I have hit product market fit and I don't need to innovate anymore, right? So in spite of getting validation from the market, you have to continuously evolve, and that process was very difficult for us personally, considering the fact that we were coming from a non-technical background, right? Lastly, fundraising. I think we were rejected 60 times. Obviously, we raised 2 rounds of funding, and we recently also got incubated under IIM Bangalore. But before that, we had raised a round from Hostel Fund, wherein angels from Google, Facebook, PwC, etc., invested in Metvi. In this particular round, before raising this, we faced 60 rejections. So there was literally a period of 120 days where we were getting rejected once in every 2 days, right? And we had to be okay with it. We had to smile. We had to keep our chin up. Talk to the investors as if nothing, as if everything in our life is so perfect. And that is a very big challenge, right? Getting used to rejection, getting used to getting humiliated. And as difficult it is something that you need to take, and you need to accept, and you need to learn from, if you want to get into a position where people start inviting you to talk about your success stories, right? So I think that's obviously something that was very hard for us. Rajan, if you want to add something to the other challenges that you faced.
I think one more challenge that you face, that how you actually deal with your failures. I mean, getting demotivated by every other failure, small failure that you face in your work or your routine. You have to maintain that perseverance thing inside you. That I mean, if you have to do it, then failures is a part of the journey, and you have to accept it. So I mean, you can't just get demotivated and stop. Like you cannot just give up, right? So I think maintaining that perseverance or persistency is also the challenging factor that we faced, and we realized that things after a point of time that it was actually worthy to maintain that persistency, because of that only we have reached to a level where we are now are able to talk to people about what we did in the past.
Okay, thank you for that question. So this next question is, I think this is very crucial for us to understand as a student. When launching a startup, how much does a big institute tag or the pedigree of some institute affect you when you're building a startup? I think, yeah.
I think, to be very honest, it is something that impacts you, and specifically if you're coming from, the IITs, specifically the big four IITs, right? Delhi, Bangalore, Kanpur, and Kharagpur. These are the four. Then obviously does give you a massive edge, which is personally something that we have noticed. I think if I'm not wrong, over 20 unicorn founders have been from IIT Delhi and more than 10 from IIT Bombay. And the reason why, again, startups initially as an ecosystem in India started with technology, and therefore it's very valid that people who are directly coming from engineering institutes got an edge. But having said that, we are seeing a lot more acceptance, and obviously coming from a college like Kirodimal is something that gives us, some level of recognition. It's something that does make us sound more credible in front of the world. So, as much as I would want to say that it doesn't matter, it really does. And it's slightly sad because I've seen a lot of people who are very brilliant who are coming from not so prestigious colleges missing out, right? Even us coming from a college as good as Kirodimal, which is, I think, the top four when it comes to commerce in India, right? No second thoughts on that. Still, the IITians do happen to get a slight edge, right? So, I mean, we need to be honest about what the situation is. And having said that, having a good college definitely aids you. But even if you are not from a top tier institution, even if you're not from, a second level top tier institution, then also you should try and continue building on your product, because we've also seen a lot of unicorn startups now starting to come from unrecognized institutes, right? Or institutes that were previously considered to be tier 3 or tier 4. So I think gradually things are going to open up. Gradually, we are going to start getting a lot more talent, a lot more, higher number of unicorns from non-premier institutions. But at this point of time in the industry, yes, it does give you an edge. Yes, it does provide you with some level of credibility, and yes, it does happen to be opening some kind of networks for you when you move into the ecosystem.
Okay, so I think the next question, which is on a similar tangent, is okay, so it's not similar, but what was your process of connecting with angel investors and VCs?
So we also started with our personal contacts, and we also made a list of the investors. Okay, so we went on Google and we tried to made a list by searching like what were the recent startups who raised funds and from which angel investors. So we drafted a mail, we made a pitch deck, we made a call sheet, and we started doing cold emailing, right? But I don't remember that we were getting a great response from the cold emailing. So we also tried to explore different opportunities like incubators. And what I felt that incubators is a good way when you have to start your company like we did. So we reached out to an incubator which is also in Delhi University and also backed by Delhi government. So we shared the idea with them, and we were also in talks with some angels, but according to them, we were too early to talk about fundraising. They wanted to see more traction. But that incubation thing, I think it was a really a right decision for us to apply for an incubation, and finally we got incubated by an incubation center. And the good part was that they don't expect too much from you in terms of reporting, and they allow you to uh, play as you want in your own space. So there's not kind of a like you have to report on a weekly basis, monthly basis, because it's a kind of a thing like in initial days if you went into reporting and you just have to make reports, it will obviously you have to put your time there, right? And you would be able to put less time on the product because the team is eventually very small. So I think and once you have got incubated, then it opened the door to various angel investors, because once you get some funds, again it creates a kind of a trust. So if one incubation center has invested, so suppose if one incubation center has invested even few lakhs, it means that the idea has got the initial sort of a validation. So the angel investors are now more comfortable in talking to you because you are able to raise some funds. Whereas if you just go
without any incubation support from a or without a backing of a recognized organization, it makes slightly difficult to reach to the angel investors. So we chose the incubation part, which I think was kind of a like which obviously benefited us.
Okay, I understand. So I think so. Yeah, we're almost close to the list.
I think, were you satisfied by the answers? Because
Yeah, I
we
mean,
just
so
want to make
definitely.
sure that
So,
it creates value.
yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, it does make a sense. It make a lot of sense to get into incubators to get some sort of, brand tag behind you at first, and then approach people. So I think that helps a lot, and that definitely answers all these questions. So we just have two more questions left. If I could ask them also.
Sure, sure, sure.
Perfect. So, in current scenario, startups are a hot topic. So, but you need the smartest people to work with you, and that's like a general rule of thumb. How do you find these people, and how did you hire these people?
To be very honest, we are facing like some problem in hiring, because again, what happens in startups that if they are smart, they will obviously expect more money, which you don't have because you are a startup, right?
Yeah.
And now you can do two things. Either you can offer them a big equity, that I'm also making you a co-founder, and in future you are getting good chunk of the equity, and if we'll become rich, we'll become rich together. And you show them this vision that where they don't have to do 9 to 5 job, but they can live a good life after exiting from a company or getting a company at $1 million valuation dollars. This is the one way that you offer equity, which is also called employee stock option. Either you make them co-founder or you give them ESOPs. It means some equity if you don't have money, and if the company reaches to a certain scale, the value of the shares will increase and they will get more wealth. Right? This is one way. The second way is that you need to find those people who have an inclination towards startups, and at the same time they have the required skill set. So it's a most difficult thing to get that sort of a combination. But again, then startup is about doing difficult stuff, right? So if the things were easy, then everyone could have scaled up very easily. So and the third thing is, if you have someone in your first connection or in your family or maybe very close to you, who can probably help you. Suppose if you know someone who is good at tech, right? Very good at tech. So probably you can reach out to personal contacts. You can share a requirement with them that this is a kind of person we're trying to hire, and then try to leverage your first or second connections as much as you can, which will obviously help you in hiring. So these are the three things I think that which works well, like making them a co-founder, giving them the ESOPs, or um, finding someone from first connections or second level connections.
Okay, so I think this is great since you've mentioned ESOPs in this particular stage of our talk. So, I mean, I was saving this question. This is a personal question I wanted to ask for the last, as a last question. So, how do you decide on a plan on distributing ESOPs, or how do you, in general, you know, create this ESOP plan that you need to implement?
They have got disconnected, right?
Yeah, I think there's some.
I think there was a network issue, so we got disconnected.
Yes.
Okay, so I will probably so I will try and explain the whole process. I mean, of course, see, there is no standard way to go about this. I mean, nobody can come and tell me that I deserve 52% of equity and not 51.5, right? And it's a very, very extremely subjective way to look at things, right? But I'll tell you about what is the right process usually, or what I personally believe, what I and Rajan believe is the right template, right? So I think the person who's getting initiated, who's starting, of course, the whole process, does happen to be deserving slightly more equity, but at the same time, there's a template that needs to be drawn out with respect to who's contributing with what, right? So these are the factors that you are contributing as individuals. So let's assume that your co-founder is contributing with skills that you don't have, right? And you happen to be contributing more with the capital, right? Say that there's a third co-founder who's contributing more with the networks or the right people that they happen to be knowing in the industry, right? Say one of you three is again contributing slightly more with the time,
that you're giving to this particular organization. So usually it's the time, the efforts, the skills, the capital, and the networks, which according to me are the 5 factors that you need to list down, and you need to weigh them as per the requirement of your startup. So for example, in case of a tech startup, skills would slightly have higher weightage over capital. Why? Because it is actually a more of a skill oriented industry to get into. If at the same time I talk about manufacturing industry, probably capital would play a bigger role than the skill set, right? And it should be given higher weights. So you can simply make a table on Excel, put down the 5 parameters, put down the weights that you would want to give to all of these factors, and calculate the contributions of each and every co-founder, and then accordingly decide how much equity you would want to give, right? And I think that is the right process to follow. I think it's very, very important to not just go with a random number that, let's go for an 80-20, right? I think that's not the right way to go about things. I think we would have also thought through things better had we got the right mentorship at that point of time, right? We were able to luckily correct a lot of mistakes that we made at the early stage. But having said that, it's always good to have the right guidance and get a specific use case for your particular industry or your particular sector gets solved, right? So in case of 2 co-founders, again the situation is different. In case of 4 or 6 or 8 co-founders, the template that you can use can slightly be different. Again, the industry and the sector is also going to change how you are going to calculate these numbers, and so on and so forth. This is also one of the major topics that we kind of cover within MECRI business program, because this is one of the problems that we faced, and we got influenced by a third person and initially ended up making the wrong choices with respect to this. So I think it's very important to spend time and take time before you start figuring out these numbers, and work together for a little while to find that level of synergy between you and your co-founder.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Yes, I was personally taking notes, and this brings us to the end of our humongous list of questions. And just to end this session, can you leave your email ID or your LinkedIn ID so that we can connect with you in the chat box?
Sure.
And Nishkarsh, please read out, ma'am's message also. Ma'am has left.
Yes, ma'am. And also Shaurya and Rajan, our principal has, literally said that this session was very inspiring, and she hopes to keep in touch with you guys.
Thank you so much. I think we also loved coming over here. I'm so sorry that there's a big emergency that came in the middle, so I had to leave for a little while. But I hope that I and Rajan were together able to add value in terms of ensuring that people who have attended this session have been able to learn from our experiences. And of course, please feel free to drop us a mail or connect with us personally over our MECRI accounts or our email addresses. We would love to help you guys out on a personal level. Because this is also kind of help that we seek from our alumni, seniors who were graduating when we were still in college, right? So feel free to reach out to us, and in case you want to learn more about entrepreneurship, do check out MECRI Business Program. And I think it's something that we believed should have been there when we are getting started. So if that is something that fascinates you, please do check our website out.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I mean, thank you in general so much. And so the amount of knowledge we've gained from this session, I think it's tremendous. And Seema ma'am, would you like to add anything?
No, we would like to thank both Shaurya and Rajan. And once this COVID goes, we would like you to visit our college.
Sure. Absolutely.
And as ma'am has very clearly mentioned, that all of us are getting inspired by our students. So you should be in touch with us, and you should help us, build this alumni network. And as you refer to Mr. Ashish Kashyap's name, like if in case we are in touch, because I have also been trying to, in touch with him, we want to bring him on this platform. So I really don't.
Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get in touch with him. It's something that we have tried. But I mean, he's somebody who definitely inspires us from the work that he's doing with, of course, Go IBBO, Red Bus, and now in Money. So, I mean, that's pretty much it, to be very honest.
So we are really very proud of you, and thank you very much for sparing time for us, for our students. And we all are inspired today, and wish you all the best in your journey.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for your kind blessings. Take care, guys. Stay safe.
Okay, bye-bye. Nishkarsh, okay.
So I think the recording can stop and the session can end. Have a great day.